Oh, welcome to Grid Network Roundtable. 2025 NASCAR Cup Series preview. Can Joey Logano become a repeat and four-time champion? Kyle Larson, Indy Charlotte double predictions, plus our infamous random predictions for 2025. So it's been one of those days. Hello, I'm Joe San Diego. With me, we have Matthew Bro from Grid Network TV, Jonathan Fields from RacingExperts.com, and making his Grid Network debut from the Pit Box Press, Tanner Smith. Tanner, welcome to the Grid Network team.
Hi, thanks for having me. A little bit about myself, as Joe mentioned, I did work with Pitbox Press over the last year and am still associated with them through this season. You may recognize me from my NASCAR Almanac series last season, as well as, my historical content that I've piloted over there and, my own website, wideworldofdirt.com. I am very much looking forward to this opportunity with Grid Network. As you know, I am a lifelong fan of the sport, and going through West Virginia University and earning my journalism degree over there, it was definitely like a dream come true to get this opportunity to be in front of the camera and obviously engage with all of Grid Network's subscribers and fans. So I'm looking forward to our discussion today and a great year of NASCAR ahead, hopefully.
Should be a wonderful year in NASCAR, and of course, a wonderful year for all of us here at the Grid Network, in part thanks to our Patreon subscribers, Colin, Deshelle, Mark, Robin, David, and Matthew, for investing in the Grid Network each and every month. Link in the video description. I want to invest in the Grid Network, help us get to the track more frequent. Also, update our leaderboard for our super chats and buy me a coffee board. Amber has taken the lead. 4 cups of coffee. She bought coffee for us yesterday, as well as Jason M. Big thank you to the two of them for their super chat. If you do a super chat while we're on the air, we'll thank you on the air. And of course, you want to give a super chat to our newest member, Tanner Smith. We'll forward the funds as well to any members of our Grid Network team. With that said, talking about teams, one of the big teams, of course, we all remember, especially for a lot of us growing up, the ESPN and NBC TNT team from 2001 up to 2009. Bill Weber was part of that, and unfortunately, news broke today that Bill Weber has sadly passed away. Even though the news had broke today, the passing did occur on December 13th, but it's just news was coming out today. And starting with you, Jonathan, I know Bill Weber was a personality that everyone will remember from ESPN, NBC, the calls he made from pit road to the booth. What's going to stand out about Bill Weber's legacy?
Yeah, really sad to hear about. I know the National Motorsports Press Association informed members today about his passing. Really sad to hear. I think about, his statistical know-how during the pre-race shows. He would give some wild stat line and he'd be like, we looked it up, so you didn't have to. And that's when you knew that you're about to go race. And I remember listening to as a kid, or even just like his call of, Tony Stewart going to victory lane in the Brickyard 400. I've already listened to that since I heard about his passing. It's really sad to hear. Really iconic voice. Had great relationships with drivers. There was a home video I saw of after, I think it was the 1999 Pepsi 400, where Dale Earnhardt got out of the car and he's like, "Hey, Bill." And Bill's like, "Hey, Dale." And so he is just one of a kind, and he'll be missed.
Yeah, obviously, I mentioned my NASCAR Almanac series that I debuted for Pitbox Press last year, and in every one of those, I recapped the previous Cup Series race from the week before, and I took a lot of inspiration from that, from Bill Weber's 1999 year in review that he did for ESPN. I watched that a ton as a kid, as someone that lived through 1999 but did not remember any of the racing from it because I was so young. And, with his voice, being gone from us now, it definitely brings a bit of melancholy to the start of this season. But, it does inspire me and, I'm sure many others to, continue the great legacy of, like Jonathan said, his statistical brilliance that he brought to every broadcast.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very sad to hear, just like Tanner said, to start the 2025 year off with something like this occurring. And I think Bill Weber is one of those people that a lot of us know, being in this industry, whether it's writing, wanting to become broadcaster, so on and so forth, just for what he was able to do for whether it was ESPN, NBC, so on and so forth. And it's just one of those voices too. You might not recognize it now as maybe somebody who's not or maybe a casual fan, but if you go back, look up Bill Weber calls, and then you'll hear that voice and be like, that was him. So it's very sad to hear, unfortunately, to start the season off. But yeah, the thoughts are with his family at this time. Joe, you're muted.
There we go. As you all said, I echo everything, because essentially Bill Weber had done so much for inspiring so many people to do more sports journalism, broadcasting. We saw him go from pit road to the booth. Just very sad. And for anybody, of course, it's just something we are all thinking about, their family, friends, everybody impacted by the passing of Bill Weber. And of course, any more additional news, we'll bring that on Grid tonight. With that said, we'll get down to business. The reason why we're all here, 2025 NASCAR Cup Series. We're about around the corner. We got the Cookout Clash at Bowman Gray Stadium. Less than a week away. It'll be Saturday with some action on the track. Then Sunday, the full show. And one of the things, we don't have to worry about this at Bowman Gray. They call it the Madhouse, but I think it would be really crazy if we were to see this, is if a car somehow gets airborne or rolled over. 2024, we saw cars got airborne or roll over at Talladega, Michigan, Daytona, Las Vegas, not to mention the Craftsman Truck Series and Xfinity Series cars that went over. Now, NASCAR did introduce new parts at Talladega race in the playoff round. We saw some action there, but we didn't see any cars get seriously airborne. Tanner, starting with you, any concerns about the probability of more of these airborne or rollover crashes continuing?
I don't in particular have a whole lot of worries that it will continue to happen. I just think that when you drive a car that's a ton and a half and some change at a very high rate of speed, and it unfortunately gets turned an awkward way, it's unfortunately going to lift off the ground and flip over. I don't think it's something that we can necessarily stop, but the key thing that came out of all of the rollover crashes from last season is that every driver exited the car and came out relatively unscathed. I think that at the end of the day, the driver's safety is of the utmost importance, even if the crashes look very gruesome or very, they just don't look good. Outside of that, like I said, I don't see the rollovers necessarily stopping, but I do think that the drivers mostly coming out safe is what we should all strive for at the end of the day. And last season, every driver came out safe, and that's really what is most important to me.
Yeah, for sure. The interior of the car is really sound, especially with the Gen 7 car. I mean, we saw with Ryan Preece's wreck back in 2023 how he flipped over. You've seen, Rusty Wallace flip in a similar spot, a similar manner like that, 30 years prior. The car looked like a bomb went off or something. But I mean, they towed back Preece's car and it looked like it just like spun and hit the wall, maybe done a lazy little flip or something. So I mean, the interior of these cars is really secure. And as far as like the probability of, airborne wrecks, I mean, we just have to see what's going to happen, because a lot of these changes are new. And for the most part, from what we saw with the Talladega race, and obviously there weren't many wrecks to really test it out in the Talladega race, but from what we saw, like cars are able to stay on the ground. And like Tanner said, when you get past a certain point, you can only prevent so much. You can only make racing so safe. And I think it's gotten to a good point to where it is now, but it'll never stop evolving.
Yeah, I think that's the best part is like what Jonathan just said, I'll never stop evolving. But however, I kind of disagree. I think there is a little concern. Granted, I know each driver when they strap in, that's the last thing on their mind is an accident like that. But whether it was Reddick at Vegas, LaJoy at Talladega, not once, but I'm pretty sure twice, he flipped over, whether Barry at Daytona, and then even like Michigan with Kyle Sieg, for example, there's always a little bit of concern. And the safety of this car, I know it's gotten better, but last year at Talladega too, we saw Eric Jones fracture his vertebrae in his back with a hard hit. So it's like it's almost safer when they flip. Like obviously Kurt Busch's career-ending injury too didn't seem that bad. Eric Jones's wreck seemed hard, but it didn't seem that bad. And yet those are serious injuries that occurred at the time. So it's like there is concern. I remember we had a talk last year about one of the Talladega races. I think it was the latter one of the season. We were worried, genuine concern about what would happen. And granted, I mean, all the drivers get out of the car safely, but there is just always a little bit of concern when you're going, like Tanner said, you have a very heavy car and you're going really fast. So anything can happen. So like you said, the concerns though, I mean, I am a little concerned, but I think that's just me. But I think we're all a little concerned deep down, but not enough to really change the perspective of it.
And you bring up a good point, Matthew, about how in those rollover crashes, you're dissipating energy. I believe it was Brendan Gaughan had said he'd rather be in a rollover crash than hitting the concrete wall, well, now safer barrier, head on. So it is something where we've seen those crashes, like you said, Kurt Busch, Alex Bowman, again, that concussions. Thankfully, NASCAR has made those changes where likelihood of concussion hopefully has been diminished more and more, especially the back end. But head on is still a brutal, hard hit. With that said, one of the things we saw a rollover at Las Vegas from Tyler Reddick, he was still able to drive that car to pit road, try to get a service. He was done for the day, but of course he made that championship four with that stunning move on the outside of Ryan Blaney at Homestead. Power move to get into championship four. Now he and Bubba Wallace, they're driving while NASCAR, Front Row Motorsports, they're all in that lawsuit with along with 2311, Denny Hamlin. His last win was at Dover in April. Of course, he is the co-owner of 2311. So I got to ask you, starting with you, Jonathan, do you think this lawsuit will distract and potentially see Hamlin, Reddick, and Wallace not perform and maybe even miss the playoffs because of the distractions of this lawsuit?
Well, I think with the way the dates lay out for this case, where a possible trial may start up, after the season's done, I think that I don't think it's going to be as much of a distraction as some people may think. Because, when you look at them, I mean, they're professional athletes. When they get in the car, they lock in and they're there, nothing else matters once you get to the track. But it's certainly going to be on their minds, but I think it's definitely a help that they got that injunction to be able to run and to be able to, not have to worry about, oh, we're losing money and, we might have to, hemorrhage a driver or, we might have, issues with our sponsor or something. So I don't think it's going to be as much of a distraction as people think, just with the way the court dates line up and the way things are with just how they are as drivers.
Yeah, and I think like Jonathan said, especially with the court dates, but looking at, I mean, for one of the owners, Michael Jordan, he's the definition of an athlete that when his back is against the wall, he always prevails. And I think a lot can be said, too, when it comes to Denny Hamlin as a driver, too. Just always, I know he hasn't won the championship. I know everyone talks about that. But, Denny Hamlin's really one of the best to ever do it in this sport. So am I worried about these guys with the lawsuit? Absolutely not. I mean, taking a look at when the lawsuit was announced, I believe it was October 2nd, 2024. I mean, look at the results. I got a note card here. Hamlin had 5 top 11 finishes in the last 6 races. He was consistent. Bubba Wallace had 3 top 10 finishes. Tyler Reddick won and then had a top 6 finish, I would say. He finished 6th. Reddick wasn't as consistent as the other two, but Reddick's also the only one that made the championship 4. So I think there is no concern, especially considering the way the scale tips in their favor when it comes to this lawsuit. Initially, it wasn't looking too good, but when you look at it now, I mean, it seems like they are getting almost everything they want and then some. So it's going to be one of the best stories to follow, in my opinion, this coming season, because you have the racing aspect and then you have what they try to create on TV, that drama aspect. We don't need a show for it. We have it right here with the great reporting by all the people out there. Even, I mean, Jonathan's reporting too. I know multiple people have shared his stories about this case. So it's very awesome to see in terms of the in-depth reporting, what we have access to as reporters to see it going on. But will it affect 2311, even maybe Riley Herbst? I don't know. But other than that, the other guys, not at all. I don't believe so.
Yeah, just to tag along there, I don't foresee either of the 2311 drivers being too affected by this. Something that should be a bit more paid attention to is the fact that Bubba is coming into this season with a new crew chief in Charles Deneke, coming over from Christian Eckes's team at McAnally Hilgeman Racing in the Truck Series. It'll be interesting to see how that skill set with the Truck Series translates over to the Cup Series. Obviously, it's a completely different platform, but, obviously the, machinations of how the cars work are still somewhat the same. In addition to that, I don't foresee Reddick having any sort of a backslide. Obviously, with last season going the way that it did, I think that him and Billy Scott will approach this season looking to build from it. Obviously they won the regular season title despite all of this drama kind of happening and percolating in the background. So as far as the 45 team's concerned, I'm not concerned about them at all. The one driver of that group, though, that I am concerned about is Denny Hamlin. We obviously have his advanced age to worry about. We saw Truex have a bit of a fall off last year, as he started to age and wane in his career. You have Hamlin also having a new crew chief at this stage of his career, which I think is, again, being a bit underscored in all of this. I do not really have a whole lot of confidence in Chris Gale, considering that Ty Gibbs was on an absolute heater coming out of the Xfinity Series, and he has done very little in terms of competing at the Cup level with Chris Gale's advisory. So at the end of the day, if anybody is going to have any sort of like a distraction coming from this lawsuit, it would probably be Denny. But as far as the other 2311 drivers are concerned, I'm not too worried about them.
It'll be interesting to see how they expand with 3 cars, and I think it helps that they're bringing on Riley as their third driver, since he does bring, a good amount of, financing to be able to make that transition pretty smoothly, and he's a pretty good driver, so it'll be interesting to see.
Matthew.
Yeah, if I can add to that too, about the financial stuff with Riley Herbst bringing, like, I know terrible Herbst. I'm not calling Riley Herbst terrible. I'm just trying to say that name of the convenience store chain and the oil and stuff they do. They bring a lot of money with Monster Energy, and I think that's great. But also, I disagree with Tanner about Denny Hamlin on a fall. I think still to this day, if I need to put anyone above the age of 35 to get something done in this sport, I think it's Denny Hamlin. However, I would like to agree with him too. At the same time, I mean, we forget Denny Hamlin lost FedEx, something that has been a staple of his NASCAR career. Like, it's one of those lone sponsorships now. I mean, you have Hendrick cars with, you think Larson now, you think Shell Pennzoil, now you think Logano, Ally, Alex Bowman, so on and so forth. Napa, I can go on. Actually, I didn't realize there was that many until I started talking. But with Denny Hamlin and FedEx, that is one that I was 4 years old, I think. So 2005. I was 4 years old when Denny Hamlin and FedEx paired up, and now I am 23. That is disgusting. I'm getting old so fast. And Denny Hamlin had FedEx, and this will be the first time we won't see it. So in terms of that, like, the distraction, maybe that could be a limited factor in the back of his mind. You just lose somebody who's backed your career for the entirety of your career. But then again, at the same time, I go back to what I said. If anyone can do it, I really think it's Denny Hamlin. So it'll be interesting to see.
If Joe's hair slowly goes gray by the end of the show, it's because of that comment Matthew just made. So,
Yeah, that was talk about feeling old after hearing that. It's like, it's all good. It's going to be really interesting to see how Denny Hamlin, because like you said, he is not getting younger. His time, we know Joe Gibbs. If there's a new young prospect, money's going to talk. The sponsorship. I'm not going to go out on a limb and do what Jackson Lambros said, and he needs to perform or else he's out. I think Denny Hamlin's still going to be safe. And for those that don't remember that clip, you can find it on our channel. We'll put a link in the description as well. But I think Denny Hamlin, if he doesn't get a win, especially I would say 10 races in, you're going to see people talking about is the lawsuit becoming a distraction and all this. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that brings up. And as you mentioned, Jonathan, with Riley Herbst, now with 2311, a 3-car effort, he's going to be going for that 2025 Rookie of the Year, the 2025 rookie class. Him and Shane Van Gisbergen running full time. Both have won Xfinity Series races. Of course, Shane has not won on an oval. He shocked the world and lost at Chicago, the street course. We know it has been apparent with this system. If one rookie gets a win, they're most likely going to claim the Rookie of the Year honors if that other rookie does not get into the playoffs. So, Matthew, starting with you, which driver, and it seems like an odd question, but SVG has not won an oval, which driver is more likely to get Rookie of the Year, Herbst or Shane Van Gisbergen?
When you think of it, I'll try to answer this a little quicker so we don't age. But when you think of it, Shane Van Gisbergen's 10 years older than Riley Herbst, and they're both battling for Rookie of the Year. It reminds me a lot of, Josh Berry was the 31 or 32-year-old rookie last year, too. So it's kind of funny how that works. Oh, no, I think you have to be SVG. You have, even if you say he doesn't win on an oval, you have COTA, Mexico City, Chicago, Sonoma, Watkins Glen, and the Roval. Those are 6 chances that I would bet money that Shane Van Gisbergen will finish in the top 2. Even though last year, he didn't do as well. I was at Watkins Glen where he finished second to Chris Buescher. And then obviously Chicago, he was doing well until the brakes failed on, I think it was it Briscoe, and then just took SVG out in that one. So, he didn't have that much of an impressive Cup year. And so I guess we'll see what happens there. But in terms of Riley Herbst, I think you can't count him out, though, at the same time. Can you argue 2311 equipment might be better than Trackhouse? I don't know. That's really cool to see when they came in at the same time in 2021, I believe it was. Just the statistics are almost identical for those two teams. And now you're bringing in Riley Herbst, Shane Van Gisbergen. Shane Van Gisbergen's already won for them. But Riley Herbst is one of those drivers. When he gets hot, he can get hot. I remember 2023, I believe it was, where he didn't make the playoffs in the Xfinity Series. He had 5 straight top 5s the end of the year, including his first career win. So I think he can make it competitive. It sucks that there's only 2 rookies this year, but I think SVG, though, at the end of the day, with all that experience as a rookie, is going to get it done.
Yeah, just to, tag along on what Matthew said, I think that Herbst definitely can't be counted out with, 2311's, obvious, equipment that they carried all the way to a Final Four last year. Let's not forget. The issue I have with Herbst is that, yes, while SVG has not won on an oval yet, Herbst has only won on 2 ovals. And one of those was at Indy last year where we had choke down horsepower as part of the package. And, that's not to take away from the impressive heroics he used to take that win away from Eric Almirola. Let's not diminish that. But at the end of the day, at the Cup Series level, it's a completely different car from the Xfinity platform. The one thing I will say about Herbst in terms of where he might find a win is at a super speedway. Quiet as it's kept, he was in the mix at the 2023 Talladega Fall race and had Corey LaJoie not inserted his fender into Herbst's bumper at the end of the tri-oval there, maybe he has a chance to shoot around Harvick and go for the win. We don't know. But at the end of the day, we're talking about a world-class driver versus a guy that has mostly stayed in Xfinity and in the NASCAR ranks, not because of performance completely, but because he has a lot of funding. Though Herbst has a lot more experience in a stock car over SVG has more experience in the style of car that the next gen is and what it's based off of versus Herbst. So kind of, hearkening back to what was said earlier about SVG, he is a absolute demon on these road courses, and it's impossible for me to believe that he is going to miss a playoff, bid this season and not win Rookie of the Year. I could easily see him winning any of the road courses and maybe mixing it up at a couple of the ovals, but I think it's going to be one of those he's still learning kind of years as far as that's concerned.
As far as the Rookie of the Year battle, I say if Shane Van Gisbergen wins on one of the road courses, absolutely he's going to be Rookie of the Year. If he does not, I think it's going to be closer than a lot of people think, because I think Riley Herbst has come a long ways in recent years with his driving talent. You mentioned it, that battle that he had with Eric Almirola at Indianapolis, that win that he had in Las Vegas back in 2023, that run that he was on, even the Phoenix race, he dominated that race and went to victory lane and really showed his talent. Is he rough around the edges a little bit? Absolutely, but I think this season will be, like you mentioned, a good season to learn a little bit, and just get acquainted with the Cup cars. And I think it's going to be pretty close because, Shane Van Gisbergen, great road course racer, absolutely has done a good job with his limited starts, but I just think he's going to be struggling a little bit with the ovals to start, especially with such a deep talent pool in the Cup Series of a lot of drivers who have a lot of experience on ovals, especially with the Gen 7 car. So I think it's going to be close, but I would give road course win, give it to SVG. Otherwise, it's going to be close, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I also want to point out something Tanner said I think is hilarious, and I want to give him credit. I'm not going to take this one. It's the battle of Red Bull versus Monster Energy to see what's going to happen in this one. And the fun fact I want to point out one here about Riley Herbst. I believe it was a Trey Ryan stat. Shout out to him. I know he just got a big job working in motorsport. If you read gridnetworktv.com, almost every story I have written there towards the end, there's something from Trey Ryan. I appreciate him. Great guy. But I believe he pointed out that Riley Herbst was the first driver, I think in NASCAR history, to have a top 10 in his debut in the Cup Series, in the Xfinity Series, in trucks, in ARCA, and K&N. I think that's just a random fun fact. Really, I think that's just fun. That's all I got to add to that. I just wanted to say that.
Yeah.
Did not know that. Interesting.
He's better than people give him credit for, I will say.
Maybe he should do the Indy double to get a top 10 in his debut. So it's going to be really interesting. I love this idea of the Red Bull Monster Energy battle for Rookie of the Year. That could be some great marketing. I hope they sort of make a bet. You know how sometimes some teams, especially like two teams in the playoffs, usually the mayors of each city will make a bet with each other. Like, we win, we'll give you give us this or that. That'd be pretty funny. Like the two that make a bet for charity. So be interesting to see how it goes. In the chat room, we have J-Dog. He says, let's go Ryan Blaney. So Ryan Blaney fan, assuming he's probably wanting Blaney to get the championship, potentially the Daytona 500, which with that said, let's do a quick lightning round where I'll ask each of you a quick question, quick answers. So let's get started. Speaking about the championship last year, all four Hendrick Motorsport drivers won a race. How many will win a race in 2025? Starting with you, Tanner.
I'm going to go with 3. I think William Byron's going to have a very bad year. I don't know why, but the vibes are just not there. They went the entire last 28 events last year without winning, and their 3 wins were, to be fair, dominating at COTA, which was impressive. But Christopher Bell, had he had another lap, maybe gets there. So that could have been one win gone. The undercut that he performed at Martinsville led to another win. And obviously the controversial ending of last year's Daytona 500 was his other win. He didn't really win any races outside of COTA on outright pace. So I'm going to be honest, I see him kind of having a backslide while Alex Bowman and Chase Elliott start to improve a little bit. So, and, Kyle Larson and Cliff Daniels are an incomparable team in the sport now that, Hamlin and Gabe Hart are no longer together. So I'm going with 3 and Byron being the odd man out. He will still make the playoffs on points, though.
Ooh.
I say all 4 of them win, honestly. I agree with your assessment that Bowman and Elliott will elevate themselves this season. I think both of them could easily get multiple wins this season, but I think William Byron's going to go to victory lane. I mean, he and Rudy Fugle are just too good, even though they didn't, go to victory lane for, you mentioned, 28 races to end the season. Like, they're just too good to not go to victory lane. So I think all 4 of them will.
Yeah, I agree with Jonathan there. I think all 4 of them do. And I think Alex Bowman is kind of like the Riley Herbst. I don't think he gets enough credit. Every year there's always something. Oh, is he going to get replaced? Is he going to get replaced? I know he won 4 races a couple years ago. I think it's going to be all 4 of them. And even if in the next gen era they still haven't won a championship, even though they won the previous 2 before the next gen era with Elliott and Larson, obviously, I think it's the opposite of what Tanner said, Byron. I think Byron could probably win the championship this year, but we'll see. You never know, though. We saw Chastain went from second and then kind of fell off a little bit. So you never know.
I'm going to go. I think I have to agree with Tanner. I think 3. And I think Bowman will also be the odd man out. I just think it's hit or miss with him. Like you said, people I think underrate him. When he's good, but then just sometimes seems bad luck sometimes gets the best of him. So it will be really interesting to see. Now, Chase Briscoe, he is moving to the 19 with crew chief James Small. Jonathan, starting with you. Does Briscoe, A, win no races, B, win 1 race, or C, win multiple races?
I think he wins multiple races this season. I think he makes a round of 8 run in the playoffs. I mean, that 19 team looked really good at the start of last year, especially on some of the shorter tracks. They've been around, and Briscoe, I mean, this is his opportunity. He's always been a guy who showed up when, there's an opportunity on the line to really make his career go to another level. So I think he's going to win multiple races.
Yeah, I'm going to say 1. I think he wins 1. I'd probably give you a better answer after the first 5 races of the year. He's one of those guys, Jonathan just said, when he needs to go out there, he does. Obviously, one of my Jackson Lambros predictions last year, I said Stuart Haas wasn't going to win a race. Oh, I was wrong because Briscoe shut me up there. I remember sending it in the group my bad, guys. So I think Briscoe can win 1. This is probably the best team I'd argue he's ever been on. I mean, it's not really hard, honestly. He hasn't been on a lot of teams in his career. But in terms of when he was with Stuart Haas in Xfinity, he said, I need to at least get 8 wins to move up. And he got 9, I believe. So he can do it very easily. He's got one of the best teams in the sport, the best Toyota team in the sport. So I say he wins at least 1. So I guess B1 for my answer there, Joe.
I am going to say he's going to win 1 race as a playoff spoiler. I think that James Small has shown over the next-gen era that he isn't exactly the best at making in-race adjustments to keep up with the racetrack. Now, obviously we could point towards Martin Truex Jr. and him declining, but he clearly still had the juice to get poles and be in the second round of qualifying most weeks, so they knew how to make a car fast coming out of the holler. What they failed to do oftentimes was capitalize on that throughout the race. And the problem with Briscoe hasn't ever been his talent or his speed. It's been his decision making. And I do think he will come close to winning races throughout the regular season at tracks that he's strong at, such as Iowa or even a New Hampshire. But I think at the end of the day, he's probably going to be the fourth JGR car. And we've seen the fourth JGR car the past few seasons not win a race. So I could see him finally putting the pieces together around Kansas or maybe Vegas later in the season, but I'm a little concerned for their, output as far as the regular season is concerned.
Interesting take in the chat room. J Dog went with B, one race, and meant to say he can do good with the equipment and having a new team. And I think I'm going to go with B as well, at least one race. He only needs to win one to prove us correct. Multiple, that'd be a great validation of his potential now that he's no longer with Stewart Haas Racing. Speaking of Stewart Haas Racing, of course, Ford has 3 single car teams this year: Haas Factory, Rick Ware Racing, and the Wood Brothers. Tanner, starting with you, in what order do they finish in the owner points from highest to lowest?
I kind of air quoted you as far as Wood Brothers being a single car team, but
Yep.
I definitely lean towards Haas Factory team with Cole Custer returning to the Cup Series. I think they'll be the highest, followed by Wood Brothers with Josh Berry, and then Rick Ware bringing up the rear with Cody Ware. I don't feel like I have to explain why Cody Ware would be the last one there too much, so I'll just move to Josh Berry. I do think he will have a better season holistically than Harrison Burton has over the past 3. I mean, 2 top 10s is not going to be hard to top, which is what Burton had in all 3 years that he was with Wood Brothers. I don't see him getting a win and getting into the playoffs, but I could see him maybe competing at Martinsville now that he'll have like Ryan Blaney's data to work off of with the Cup car platform, compared to Xfinity, where he did have success at that track. But at the end of the day, Cole Custer has obviously won at this level before, obviously not in this era of car, but he showed a lot of speed and a lot more confidence in the Xfinity Series this time around. And I think with all of that in mind and being a strong single car operation with the Roush Fenway connection, or RFK connection, sorry, Brad, but I think with that connection, they'll be a lot better this season. And, obviously not having 4 cars will be an easier way to find speed.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be pretty close between Barry and Custer. I just see that their experience is very similar, and like the situations with RFK providing that alliance that you mentioned with Haas. So I would, I will give the nod to Barry by the slightest little bit, but I don't think Custer's going to be that far behind.
Yeah, I think it's tough too, because how much of Haas Factory team this year is going to be like what old Stewart Haas was, for an example. Prime, like a few years ago Stewart Haas, not last year Stewart Haas. But I have to agree in terms of the order, Tanner, I think it's going to be Cole Custer. He's shown he can win at this level. He went down to the Xfinity Series 2 years ago, kicked some butt, like dominated, and then came back, and he did very well even last year. And he earned that right to be that one driver to stay with the Haas name. Second, I think Josh Berry too. I don't know how well Wood Brothers is going to do. They're one of those teams that, besides the win that Harrison Burton had, which was absolutely awesome for him and that team to get number 100, Wood Brothers really hasn't been relevant since Ryan Blaney was there. I know Matt DiVetto made the playoffs, so on and so forth, but still, it's like what the fall off they had in terms of as like an organization performance. So they'll be second. And then I'm not gonna talk about Rick Ware in this scenario. I don't know what. I just don't. I mean, props to them. It is what it is.
In the chat room, J-Dog, your honestly could go any way. And then Justin Allen, Josh Berry was very good during Kevin Harvick's setup. I put him above the Haas Factory team, Rick Ware Racing. tire bases on that and the fact he's going to have access to Penske, because as you mentioned, Tanner, the sort of air quotes with the single car team, I think I'm leaning towards Barry being the top of the Wood Brothers, then Haas Factory. Rick Ware Racing, unless they win a super speedway race because everyone's crashing out, which we've seen them being up there towards the front before mayhem occurs. That's the only way I can see them finishing ahead in the owner's standings. Now, of course, one driver that's moved over from Stuart Haas to RFK, Ryan Preece. Of course, he'll still be in the Ford, but he's been in the Cup Series for quite some time. I feel like there's always this excitement when he joins Stuart Haas Racing. He's going to be there. Great performance at LA in the Clash, and then just nothing. He's mostly talked about for his rollover at Daytona. Jonathan, starting with you. Does he need a playoff appearance to secure his future in the Cup Series?
Either this season or next season, because I think that I think with the relations that he has with Kroger, he's going to get 2 seasons in that car. That's in my opinion. But, a playoff appearance would definitely help, his future. And I think he could get it done. He's good at super speedways. He's good at short tracks. We saw him lead laps at Martinsville back in 2023 from the pole. Had it not been for that penalty, probably would have gone on to win that or been pretty close. So, but yes, I do think he needs a playoff appearance, especially with the level that RFK has been performing at in recent years.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, RFK has 2. I have 1 former champion, and I think Chris Buescher can absolutely get it done too. Ryan Preece, I think a lot of it is similar to Corey LaJoie. I think a lot of the sponsorship, having Kroger as an ally, and then obviously LaJoie just being in the sport for so long, kept them around a little longer. As a fan of the sport, I would have loved to see Ryan Preece go down to Xfinity, go down the trucks, and kick some butt like he has before. But he's getting an opportunity again. I know maybe from a fan perspective, a lot of people are like, why is Ryan Preece here? But if you have some of the best owners in all of professional, I guess, motorsport, when you add Tony Stewart, Gene Haas as an example, and then you have, Brad Keselowski, putting this kid, he's probably twice my age, putting this guy in the car, there's got to be a reason why. And I think he can show it. But I do think does he need to make the playoffs? Yeah, I think so. I don't know if it's going to be a 1-year trial or 2-year trial. I mean, who does Ford really have coming up through the ranks? Probably a lot of talent, though. Anything can happen in this sport. I wonder if it's going to be similar to, I think, Daniel Suarez's situation. A lot of people were like, he might be on the hot seat, and then he came out and won. So I think it's likely that Preece can do the same thing. And Preece, I think he's both over and underrated when it comes to certain things. He's one of those drivers that you don't expect him to be there, then boom, he's second place, and then he might be 30th, and then the next week he's third. So I guess that really all depends on that. So I'm going to say, does he need a playoffs appearance? Yeah, I really think he does. And there's no really reason why he shouldn't make the playoffs.
So I think that Preece does not need one this season, but he needs to show immense improvement over the rest of his entire Cup Series career. Has he finished in the top 25 in points at any point in his career? I can't readily recall that he has. He has definitely shown flashes here and there of being a Cup-capable driver. And, obviously he dominated stage 1 from the pole at Martinsville in the spring 2023 Martinsville race, but then they had a pit penalty and he never recovered from it. I think that Preece has a lot to offer. Like Jonathan said, like he has had a lot of success at short tracks and super speedways. It's just that he hasn't really translated that to tangible results a lot of the time. So I don't think this year he needs to go out and win a race. I think it would be great if he did, but he definitely needs to show like marked improvement for Kroger to continue to stick by him past 2026, we'll say. I think that Jonathan kind of hit it right on the money that he definitely needs to make the playoffs within these next 2 years unless he has a dramatic fall off this season that leads to his dismissal. I think that having Brad and Chris Buescher there, who was his teammate at JTG, let's not forget, I think having that support system around him will be extremely beneficial in terms of, his improvement this season. But it's really starting to get to nail-biting territory for him to keep his spot in Cup.
I think this is the moment for him because if you look back at his career, 2019 to 2021, JTG Doherty Racing, they were never good with two cars. Let's just be honest here. 2021, it was an uncharted car. 2022, 2024 was, or I'm getting the 2023 to 2024, excuse me, was Stewart Haas Racing, was when they were on the downslope, and the decline. So I think this is the moment. RFK is on the rise. He's got to perform. So we'll see what he's capable of.
Go ahead, Matthew.
I was just going to say, and if it doesn't work out, he can go dominate the wheel and modifieds like he's very well capable of.
William Modifieds, yep. In the chat room, Justin, I've heard since his JTG days, he just needs the equipment with Ryan Preece. I believe he needs a good year with top 10 finishes and top 5 finishes. That would be a huge step for him. Ryan Preece has a lot of people that believe in him for what he's done. Everything but a cup car. It's time for him to show up or ship out. Definitely get 2 years through. And Rosalind is saying you're doing well as well. So all good. Encourage everyone in the chat. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss any of our programs. Next question in the lightning round. Legacy Motor Club. Do you see that organization getting a win or more problems ahead? Starting with you, Matthew.
Unfortunately, the latter. I think there's more problems ahead. I know I believe, announced today Jimmy Johnson's the new majority owner of that organization, which is crazy. I mean, he bought in a few years ago, then all of a sudden he's the main owner of the team. I don't know what's going on with them. I don't know why. I mean, Eric Jones, truly, I will die on this hill that Eric Jones, if you put him in any of the top tier equipment again, he's a championship contender. I truly believe Eric Jones is one of the most underrated drivers in this sport. And with Joe Gibbs, he still did well. And then when he got booted out for Christopher Bell, and you're like, oof. But at the same time, Christopher Bell's obviously one of the best, if not the best driver in the sport. Anyway, I don't know what they can do. I just don't know. I think they got great sponsorship too. Dollar Tree, Family Dollar, that whole organization coming over. Truly, like, learning about the marketing aspects, being able to get a deal done like that. Now, I had nothing to do with it, but the people who did, it's incredible to see. To be on the car last year, at least in one race of all 38, including the exhibition races as well. I don't know what they can do. If they get a win, it might be like Eric Jones at Darlington, where you're just like, dang, this really happened. But you never know. We could be talking like this right now, and then they just show up this year. But they're still, in terms of the totem pole of Toyota, they're the third best. They're the third Toyota team. So Eric Jones might deserve a little bit better sometimes, but I guess we'll see. John Hunter Nemechek's one of those guys too, has proven in the lower series he can get it done. But when it comes to Cup, he hasn't yet. So I guess we will find out. Hey, maybe Corey Haim's getting ready soon. You never know.
Maybe so. So my view on Legacy Motor Club is a bit skewed because they entered 2024 with no data and no setups. They completely went at it full bore without any knowledge of how the Toyota Cup car is going to work. And they kind of showed what that looks like when you don't have a notebook to go off of. I get not wanting to pay the JGR or the 2311 price tag for a technical alliance and to get all that data and information. So they were just willing to punt last year, and they very much did. I think that they're capable of winning a race this year. And I know this might sound insane, but Jimmy Johnson still got that dog in him. I think that he can still win a Cup race. And I think his performance at Phoenix in the fall, where he stayed on the lead lap for most of the day, kept his nose clean, and his performance at Charlotte in 2023 before he unfortunately wrecked out of the event shows that he's still capable, if he's got a good enough car, to maybe compete at the highest level. And if put in a good position, he can win. I somewhat agree with Matthew that Eric Jones is a high caliber talent in this sport that isn't really given the equipment necessary to compete every week. And I think that with a year of baseline knowledge to finally go off of going into this season, they'll be better than outside the top 25 like they were most of last season. So I think that at a certain track or two, or at a super speedway, they've definitely got a chance. But I think if we're suggesting that they're going to have both drivers win a race, that's definitely not going to happen. I don't think John Hunter is going to improve too much from being the most crash-worthy driver from last season. He didn't really show me a whole lot in terms of speed for most of last year to really give me the confidence that he's going to improve coming into this year. So I think there might be some credence to what Matthew said about Corey Heim might be warming up.
I'll be quick since this is the lightning round. No, I do not think Legacy Motor Club is going to win this season. I think they're going to do better than they did last season. Maybe more top fives, maybe more top tens, better performance. But I don't think they're going to win this season. They just have not shown it, not been close. Maybe on a field mileage race, maybe on a super speedway, but I don't think they're going to go to victory lane.
Yeah, if I can make a quick comment. I know Tanner said Jimmy got that dog in him. I think the dog that Jimmy has left is my 17-and-a-half-year-old Pomeranian. Love my dog Minx to death. But there comes a point where it's just, I'm sorry. Jimmy Johnson, you love him. You love to keep him around. He's out there collecting data from what I've heard from sources about that, where he's already done it. He's one of the greatest, if not the greatest, to ever do it. He's not running out there to win. He's running out there to be a team player, majority owner, get data for the team. But yes, shout out to Minx about that one. So that's the dog I think Jimmy's got left in him in terms of a Cup career.
Ouch.
Brutal take, but this is the round table. So that said, in the chat room, they're in good position with full year notes and backing behind Jimmy's acquisition. They should be in better than last year. I don't know if they really had the people in house to get the most out of those cars, but I hope they can continue to improve. And then J-Dog saying with Jimmy owning it, I think they can improve. I agree with Jonathan. So holy cow, that was Minx. We support Minx regardless of age. But that said, Tanner, speaking about another organization that's looking for improvement, Richard Childress Racing, Kyle Busch, winless last year. If they go winless again, will this fracture their relationship?
I can't fathom Kyle Busch going 2 years without a win. If they don't win this year, oh yeah. Well, it's a contract year for Kyle Busch, correct? Pretty sure that was supported through all the talks about last year where he was struggling so much. People were like, well, maybe he could go to 2311's third car. Well, he had another year on his contract. So I think he was signed to a 3-year deal. So yeah, I mean, if the relationship is fractured, then he can just leave. But I just don't foresee Kyle going that long without a win. I think his problem last year was pushing too hard when he didn't really need to or wasn't going to gain enough to even be in the conversation to win. And it ruined his confidence to an extent. I think if he comes into this season with the mindset of, if I can just get 7th this race and just keep stacking like 7th to 11th place finishes, they can start building towards winning again. And I think he's capable of that. But he definitely got humbled a bit last season. So I think if they go another 36 races without winning one, that relationship is over. Very much over.
Well, I think, if they do go winless again, I think we got to start looking at, is this the end of Kyle Busch's Cup Series career? I mean, it's crazy to think about, considering I remember when he came in as the young gun who was pissing everybody off, and, making everybody mad and raising hell and all that and whatnot. We can say hell on the round table, I think, can we, Joe? I don't know. Anyways, at the end of this season, there's only going to be 13 other drivers who have more starts than Kyle Busch. If he makes every start, he'll be at 750 at the end of this season, which is crazy to think about.
Wow.
He's had a great career. That said, though, I don't think Kyle Busch is going to go win this season. I just, like Tanner said, I just don't see it. It's unfathomable. He's going to be a contender in the Daytona 500 again. There's those races where he's always really good. One of these is going to hit.
Yeah, and also, Jonathan, I think certain things can be said after I just crapped on my dog. Shout out Minx. In terms of the relationship being... Sorry, Joe made a fun comment. I'll touch on it in a second, so I don't lose my train of thought. But we're having fun, aren't we, guys? In terms of that relationship being fractured, I honestly think it's already fractured. I think Kyle Busch, if there wasn't for legalities in the sport and contracts, he wouldn't be with RCR in that 8 car right now. Something about watching, arguably, I'm going to say the greatest driver to ever set foot in the top 3 NASCAR series, not succeed it for the first time literally ever in his career. And I think he can come out and probably win 3 races if he really has the equipment to do so. I think he needs a couple truck races that he'll win again. But I think there's already a fracture in that relationship. And I think if he does go winless, you're not going to see him in that number 8 car. And if you do, it's for another team because RCR decided to give or let him keep the 8 and they took a different number.
It'll be interesting to see what happens in the chat room. J-Dog says Kyle needs to improve, but I want him to get it. And I agree with Tanner. And Justin, Kyle is going somewhere else if he doesn't win by July, in my opinion. That could be a bit bold. A mid-season change?
Where would he go? That's my question. But, yeah.
Where would he go? And, of course, Ben Schneider, race held orderly, praise Dale quarterly. And, of course, for everyone tuning in, link in the video description, Ben's channel, he just premiered a video remake of some of the historic moments in NASCAR bushwhacking. And of course, one of the big things when it comes to NASCAR, the teams that are coming up this year, Spire, they're looking a lot stronger. Front row, they got a new driver lineup. They've gotten their wins. I got to ask you, Jonathan, which team is likely to win first, Spire Motorsports or Front Row?
I'll give the nod to Front Row Motorsports because Todd Gilliland was really good in the first 2 races last season. I mean, he's all amped up, got a lot of new partners, a lot of returning partners. He's got the 34 ride. I think he is going to be one to watch, to sit on the pole for the Daytona 500, sit on the pole maybe for Atlanta as well, to win the race, both races. So I think Front Row Motorsports.
Tough. You got 2 3-car teams here. So Spire has Justin Haley, Michael McDowell going over from Front Row, and then Carson Osvar, and then Zane Smith going over from Spire to Front Row. Todd Gillen and Noah Gragson. I think the speed for the poles are going to be there for Front Row, and I also think I'd give them the nod. I think Hocevar might sneak in a win there, but in terms of if I have to put confidence in the guys to get it done, I'm honestly going to say I think Zane Smith. I have more confidence in Zane Smith to get it done than Noah Gragson. I think Noah Gragson's really come into his own, especially moving to Stuart Haas. But I think Zane Smith didn't really get a fair chance with Spire. I think he was hoping to get that Trackhouse ride, and he never did. And I think this is a chance for him to rebuild that relationship with Front Row, and I think Zane Smith can get it done. So I'm going to say Front Row.
I'm going to go the opposite way. So we have a team in Front Row with 3 guys that have no wins. And we have another team in Spire who just gained Rodney Childers and a veteran driver that did come from Front Row that has 2 wins, including a Daytona 500, plus Justin Haley, who, regardless of circumstances, did win a Cup race. I think that of those 2 teams, Spire will win a race first. I mean, they do have a Hendrick alliance, kind of. I think that Carson Hocevar lit the world on fire in that equipment last year, and an off season where he gets to, comb through the data of Kyle Larson, Chase Elliott, William Byron, Alex Bowman. That can only help bolster him coming into this year, especially because we are going on the 4th consecutive year of the exact same Camaro platform that Chevy's been running. At the end of the day, I think that Spire has better drivers total. I think that though Gragson did kind of find his footing in the Cup Series last year compared to his stint with Legacy, I still don't think he is at a race-winning level unless it's a super speedway. Zane Smith did compete pretty well at Indy, quiet as it's kept, but I still think he's at least another year away from being a winner. And as much as I very much have an appreciation for Todd Gilliland and his improvement last year, he did kind of fall off towards the end of the season. And I just think that when you have 3 drivers under the age of like 28 that don't have any wins, it's going to be pretty hard for you to find a win in comparison to a team that does have proven winners on it.
Wow, it's going to be interesting to see. That was our lightning round in the chat room. J-Dog's going with front row because of the super speedways and has subscribed. So thank you, J-Dog. Justin Allen, Rodney Childress, plus Hendrick support is going to be deadly potential. I agree with Tanner Hendricks, of course. So overall, it's going to be really interesting to just see what everything turns out. With that said, now, one question I think I mentioned at the beginning of the show. Matthew, we're going to start with you. Last year, Kyle Larson, Memorial Day double. Everybody was talking about it. We were so excited. Indianapolis 500, Coca-Cola 600. Then the weather sort of made everything really a disappointing day for Kyle Larson. He sent out that tweet afterwards saying how he just felt like he let down so many people. The weather, though, messed up the plans, preventing him from starting the 600 because of the 600 being called off after that delay due to too much moisture on there. So I got to ask you this year, Matthew, their hope is weather will not be an issue. But now that Kyle Larson has gotten that seat time at the Indy 500, we know what he could do at Charlotte. What are your expectations for Kyle Larson?
Yeah, I just hope the weather holds off. I mean, to see this will just be awesome for all of motorsports fans. I think his expectations, top 15 in both, to be honest with you. I think if he can get in on speed, which he can in Indy, I think he can get a top 10 even. And then Charlotte, he can win. He can win anywhere. It's Kyle Larson, let's be honest. So I think I'm going to say top 15 for both.
I would say top 10 for the Indy 500. Then I say top 5 to a win for the Coca-Cola 600. We all know how he performs at Charlotte, and we saw him really perform in Indy. So I think this year will be better, year 2.
Yeah, I am rolling with a top 10 level performance at Indy before going to Charlotte and winning. I think he definitely has the speed to win that race. I mean, Justin Allgaier, who hadn't been in a Cup car in several years, went and ran 13th in that car last year. So I think that he's definitely got the potential to win that one, but I just don't think he's quite there for Indy yet.
And in the chat room, Tanner, one of your big fans, Alex, of course, from the Gay Racing Podcast, tune in. I encourage everyone to check out the Gay Racing Podcast on YouTube and everywhere you can find podcasts online. With that said, of course, Kyle Larson has to be one of the favorites for the championship. But the defending champion is Joey Logano, a 3-time champion. However, many are critical on how he won it with a mediocre season and some luck. The official word, the 2025 playoff format, and any potential changes coming out today, well, it was official. NASCAR said they will not be making any changes for this season. So as of today, official word, no changes to the playoffs for 2025. Tanner, starting with you, do you anticipate Joey Logano as a championship contender, or maybe not, since this is an odd number year?
I think he will actually do very well this year. Joey Logano is a person that thrives off of when people hate him. and a lot of people hated how he won that title last year, and it's definitely something that has stuck inside of him. I think he's going to come out of being a champion with a chip on his shoulder, as insane as that sounds, and I think he's going to go out and have a 3 or 4 win season, which is a bit of a contrast from what his odd number years have looked like since about 2019. So I think he'll contend for the title, but I don't suspect that he wins the title.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that, now that Penske has some notes on the new Ford body, that they're going to be running good this season. And whether he goes to victory lane or not, I'm not sure. It's always Logano always seems to score a win, so maybe he will. But yeah, I don't think he's going to be the same kind of championship contender he usually is, even years.
I'm going to go the opposite of you guys. I think he gets eliminated in either the round of 12 or round of 16. Shout out Joey Logano, one of the first drivers I ever met when I was like 8 years old at Adirondack Speedway, won a K&N or Busch race, whatever it was. Helped me love this sport even more, so thank you. However, I don't see it. I know the odd number year, it's very peculiar. I think he wouldn't have even made the playoffs if he didn't get that win last season in terms of points. Even Kyle Busch had more points statistically than he did. I think if he gets in the playoffs on points or a win, I think he gets eliminated early. But then he'll come back 2026 and Joey Logano, 4-time champion. So that's what we'll do.
Well, let's not forget that he was leading in the final corner at Richmond before Austin Dillon kamikazed him. So he would have at least probably won another race, but I digress.
I can't disagree with that.
Oh, Richmond. In the chat room, Justin has faith in the odd years. Logano is boldy. Can't wait for this guy. 8th in the points to win Talladega and get in the championship 4, to be honest. Oh, my goodness. That would be... that would just be the kicker, especially if since they announced today, they're not changing the format. With that said, with no format change, we got to talk about one team that, look, they had all 4 cars in the playoffs. Joe Gibbs Racing, but none of them made the championship 4. Hamlin, not that many years left. Ty Gibbs, Christopher Bell, they could be potential leaders for this team. Chase Briscoe, we talked about him in the lightning round. Mix on will he get 1 win or multiple wins? Jonathan, do you feel Joe Gibbs Racing is stronger this season than last season?
I think the first part of the year will be a bit of a transition for them, especially with the new driver. And then, Ty Gibbs having a crew chief who is new to the Cup Series, and then Denny Hamlin adjusting to his crew chief. I think Christopher Bell will do well. But once the season gets going, I think they'll be a little bit stronger. I think Gibbs will really do well. I think Briscoe's going to do well. Hamlin's going to be solid, and Bell's going to do well. So I think it's going to be a wash, but it's going to be better than the second half of the season, which was really disappointing for JGR.
Yeah, I think in terms of where they finished last year, Bell was 5th, Hamlin was 8th, Truex was 10th, but then you look, Briscoe was 14th in the points, Gibbs was 15th. Do they have a better driver lineup this year? No, I don't think so. I think Truex Jr. is still better than Briscoe. However, I think they can be stronger. All of them, though, are experiencing some sort of change, really, except Christopher Bell, like you guys mentioned, lost a sponsorship, new crew chief, new team for 3 of the 4 guys. And then there's Christopher Bell, arguably the best Toyota driver in the sport the last 3 seasons. So I think he has a possibility to really get wins early and kind of take off. I know in the grid ranking, he's always up there. So I expect him to be up there again. I think they will be stronger, though, however, because I think they have a little bit of that, I guess, that chip, arguably the best team in the sport besides like Penske and Hendrick, the best Toyota team in the sport, come out and don't have one guy in the championship 4. I think they're one of the teams that could probably have 3 guys in the championship 4.
I don't think I'd go that far, but I think something that will kind of be swept under the rug is the fact that Chris Gabehart is moving over to a comp director role, much like Chad Canalsa did after the 2020 season. And we saw how well Hendrick Motorsports did after their Golden Goose moved over to a more advisory role in the team. I don't think it'll be quite that severe of an improvement for JGR right away, But I do think that Christopher Bell is going to have a season where he lights the world on fire. I mean, let's face it, the guy is allowed to run dirt again. And I bet that absolutely charges him up in between cup races when, he's able to get out to those shorter tracks and sling mud around. So I think that as a whole, JGR will probably have a similar season numbers-wise to the one that they had this past season, but I think that it'll be heavily weighted towards Bell winning like 5 to 6 races, where the rest of the team maybe picks up 2 or 3 cumulatively. So I think that overall JGR will get stronger as the season goes on, like Jonathan kind of suggested, but I think that the numbers will look about the same by the end of the year compared to 2024.
It'll be interesting to see what all happens. Now, we want to avoid Daytona 500 questions because of our upcoming coverage of the Daytona 500. Don't forget to be sure to subscribe. Have the pre-race before the Clash, and then, of course, for the Daytona 500 plus coverage throughout Speed Week. And now this is the fun part. We want to encourage everyone in the chat room to share it as well too. It's time for our 2025 NASCAR Cup Series predictions. This portion has become a bit infamous after Jackson Lambros and Alex Ben Schneider all made this a lot of fun last year for IndyCar. So now, Matthew, I'm going to throw it to you. We want to hear your 2025 prediction for the Cup Series, and we encourage everyone in the chat room to share your reaction as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I had a couple Ben and Jackson moments if you go to what Jonathan, Joe, and I had last year for the roundtable. But let's not. I mean, if you want to link the video at some point, I made some silly statements that did not come true. About like out of the 5 predictions I made, I think 1.25 of them came true. So don't listen to me here for the next however many minutes. But obviously, we're going to go in line. My first prediction is I had a similar one last year. There are 4 guys, I believe, that will win a race this year that didn't win last year. Unfortunately, 2 of mine from last year who didn't win, when I said they were going to win, I'm going to stick with them. I think Bubba Wallace, even though he hasn't won in a few years after winning 2 years in a row, he's just gotten so much better as a stock car racer. You can see the results. Even though it's not a number 1, he's been getting a lot of great top 5 finishes, top 10. I think that team has a chip on their shoulder as well, obviously suing NASCAR. So I think he's going to be able to come out of the gate and do well. And also shout out, now he's a father too, baby boy Bex. So I think that'll give him a little bit more power in there. My second guy is, I think, Ty Gibbs once again. I mean, a lot of guys you can compare to Ty Gibbs with like Chase Elliott, with Kyle Larson, guys who it took almost to their 100th race to get it done. I think Gibbs has like 7 or 8 races before his 100th. I think he's that one driver that really I'm the most confident in him on this list. Third, Kyle Busch. I think when you're arguably the GOAT, I'm going to just call him the GOAT, so save some words coming out of my mouth. I apologize. I think if Kyle Busch, it's very, very peculiar if he doesn't win again. I just think he will. I think he'll win in truck. I think if he goes to Xfinity for at least 5 races, I think he'll win one there, and I think he's going to bounce back and win a cup race. My last guy, first-time winner, driver of the number, gosh, what number is he now? 38?
34. Okay, it is 38 for him, yeah.
All these teams change the numbers, and then the front row just changed the truck numbers, I believe, today, too, if I'm not mistaken. I think Lane Riggs now in the 34 something, Chandler Smith in the 38. Lots of crazy fun things with front row numbers. I think Zane Smith gets it done. I'm very confident in him as a driver. I think he's done a lot with not so great equipment. So those are my 4 guys. Book it. Bubba Wallace, Ty Gibbs, Kyle Busch, Zane Smith. And if none of them win, I am not looking forward to 2026.
Yeah, I mean, shout out Jackson Todd on the 100 race theory. But yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with any of those guys on the list. They all showed a lot of potential last year or showed race winning speed at some places. I mean, Bubba didn't exactly look like he came close to a win, but he obviously had that run at Bristol that went completely underscored and undercovered because we had to watch Daniel Suarez hold up Ty Gibbs for 100 laps. But I digress.
Yeah.
And Tanner, you want to share your predictions as well.
Gotcha. So my first big prediction for 2025 is Chevy is going to have a down year, and they showed signs of it last year. I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that Ford and Toyota kind of optimized their cars for performance with the next gen platform, and Chevy has still been rocking the same Camaro body that they've been running since 2022. As a result, I think that they are in a box in a way because of that. So most of their wins last year came on, super speedways, or they came on road courses. I just feel like that's where their bread and butter is going to be this year. They're going to win less intermediates and less short tracks, and they're going to really focus on those road courses because, look at Trackhouse in particular. They've got SVG now coming up to Cup. They'll have Zilish in a race, one of these for at least one event. They also have Suarez and Chastain, who have both won in this car on those road courses. So I expect Chevy to really compete on those tracks, but at the intermediates and some of the short tracks where, unfortunately dirty air is going to play a factor, I am a little bit less optimistic about their outlook. I think that Hendrick is going to have some form of a fall off. I don't know. Like I said earlier, it might be William Byron where it's just one team that falls off, but it could be the whole operation falls down a little bit. Who's to say? But at the end of the day, I think that Chevy is going to maybe have a bit of a backslide, but I said that throughout last year and they still won 15 races. So what do I know?
Yeah. And as talk about predictions, I want to give championship predictions. Can we do that here, Joe? Is that okay with you?
Okay.
Everything's fair game. This is roundtable.
Okay, cool. Well, in Cup, I think Christopher Bell's going to finally break through. I think second of all, in the Xfinity Series, y'all are going to have some fun with this one. I think Carson Kvapil is going to shock the world and bring home the Xfinity Series title in his first full-time season. Showed strength on a lot of different tracks. I know Connor Zilish is out there. He's going to be a contender, but I think Carson Kvapil is going to break through and be the champion this season at Xfinity. And then trucks, I think it's going to be Corey Heim. I think he's going to have a barn burner of a season and finally bring it home.
Interesting predictions. I got two I'll share quickly. My first one, I think Shane Van Gisbergen is going to have more wins than Daniel Suarez.
I don't think that's a hot take.
I think he's gonna get a couple road courses. Suarez, he needs a super speedway. I think that's his best bet. Maybe Mexico City, the home crowd effect, but I think that's gonna happen. And my second one, Connor Zilish is gonna win his Cup Series debut race at COTA. I'm so confident he's gonna be my pick a winner for that race weekend already. I just see the potential. Look what happened Watkins Glen.
Okay, but the problem is that COTA layout, no one in the field has raced on it, inclling him.
Yep.
So,
That's the advantage.
That's the advantage.
But it could also be at his detriment. Who knows?
Nobody's gonna have the notes this year. If it was the same format, I would think other drivers. But those are a couple of my predictions. Matthew, do you have additional predictions as well?
I have two instead of four more from last year. I want to bounce off both what Jonathan said and you as well, Joe. My Cup prediction is I think we're going to see a first-time champion. I don't know who it is, but I think there are four guys I have in mind, and I think, honestly, they could be the Final Four. Christopher Bell is my favorite. Last year I picked Chastain. I don't want to talk about that, though. We're going to stay with the future. Christopher Bell, I think, can get it done. William Byron, I think, has a shot to really get it done. Tyler Reddick as well. And then Denny Hamlin. I still am confident that Denny Hamlin can get it done. In terms of random, like a quick truck one, I think Daniel Hemrick gets 2 truck wins at least this year, but I'm not going to talk about that. And I was also at the Zilish event for Watkins Glen, his first race. That was awesome. But my main prediction I want to share is I think there is at least one non-Cup Series regular that wins a race. And what I'm talking about is one of those guys from down under in Australia. Whether it's Project 91, whether it's RFK puts out another Ford car, Penske, I got a list. I think if any of these guys, whether it's Brock Feeney, I'm a shout out Repco Supercars. Grid Network's an organization that has been following Shane Van Gisbergen longer than a lot of people have known Shane Van Gisbergen was one of the best drivers of all time. I think Brock Feeney, Will Brown, champion. Yes, I do, Jonathan. I have a list. Whether it's Cam Waters coming over once again, Chaz Mustard, Brody Kostecki moving over the Ford in Australia. I think he can come get it done. He has NASCAR background. If Daniel Ricciardo somehow comes in, I don't know if he'd win, but I think is a threat. Project 91, RCR, one of those organizations will get it done. I would love to see Jamie Whincup come over. I really think one of the best, if not the best, supercar driver of all time. You saw a top 5 all-time SVG get it done in his first try. I think Whincup could get it done. That's my list right here. So I'm going to toss that up and hear what you guys have to say.
Ooh, I got one to add.
Yeah,
You want to hear?
Too, so you go ahead, Jonathan.
I'm chomping at the bit here. I'm gonna throw it out there. 200 cars miss the round of 8. I think get eliminated the round of 12. And I think Toyota's gonna have Toyota and Ford. I like that prediction. That you mentioned earlier, that they're gonna have a really good time, compared to some of the Chevrolets. But with that said, too, I still think Ross Chastain's going to come back and score multiple victories, make the playoffs look more Ross Chastain like, and his Chevrolet teammate Carson Osavar is going to get that first win.
I lean towards the Hocevar getting his first win prediction, but one of my wilder ones is that Joseph Newgarden will start a Cup race this year. He has satisfied all of the requirements of being an IndyCar driver. He is a multi-time champion, now a multi-time Indy 500 winner. He's won all of their marquee events. He swept all the ovals pretty much one year. What does he have left to prove there for Roger to keep him, in the open wheel series? Outside of that, I think that Kyle Busch is actually going to have a great season, but he's only going to win one race. I think that he is entering his 20th attempt at the Daytona 500 with an organization that took a previous legend to a Daytona 500 victory that was long awaited in his 20th attempt many years ago. I just think that Kyle probably logs his victory, number 64, pretty early, and then he has a very consistent but otherwise winless season. I think he wins one and gets bounced in the round of 8 because he points races while everybody else is running for wins effectively.
Interesting stuff in the chat room. Justin, Noah Gragson will be the best of front row motor entries, Hocevar the best for Spark entries, and to be bold, we'll have more than 16 winners because of the chaos. I'll throw it quickly to you all. Do you all agree? 16 winners or more, starting with you, Jonathan, Tanner, and then Matthew.
I say we get to more than 16 winners after the playoffs start.
Okay. I think 16 is possible. I mean, this is easily one of the most talented Cup fields we've ever had, 1 through 36. So I think it's entirely possible, but I'm going to lean towards no and say that we probably get 13, and then the playoffs are absolutely insane.
I think overall we get about 18 or 19, but in terms of before the playoffs, it might be 15 or 16. And I think Joey Logano will be that one guy who's 16th that will sneak his way into the playoffs.
Joe?
I'm going to go with, I think it's going to be less than 16, to be honest. I'm thinking 12. We've been with this car for quite some time. I think one team's going to get hot. It could be a Kyle Larson. It could be Christopher Bell, now that he's racing dirt. Maybe Penske gets their act together and they just see their teams all do good. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens. With that said, Matthew, let's go for the third round of predictions, starting with you.
Yeah, it's tough because I put 2 and 3 kind of together there. In terms of other things I can think of off the top of my head, I made a prediction last year that was not even close to being right. I said Tony Breidinger was going to be the first female to win any type of NASCAR race or ARCA race. Unfortunately, I was wrong there. And I think this year, really, I think Isabella Robusto, I am more confident than ever in any female driver in the last probably 5 years that can get it done. I think Isabella Robusto will win an ARCA race. And now I didn't know Zilich and Sawalich were going to kick everyone's butt last year. Didn't know that was going to happen. This year, I don't know what's going to happen again, but I think Robusto has the best chance of a female driver in the last 5 years to get it done. And she truly is not only a great person. I mean, just see her post. She's such a friendly person, but she is a great wheeler, I should say. I was going to say wheelman, but wheelwoman, I guess. She's just incredible talent in the sport. NASCAR is very lucky, and stock car is lucky to have a talent like Isabella Robusto coming up through the ranks.
I'm excited to see what Taylor Reimer is going to do in some of her starts as well, because I think she's going to do pretty well. I'm going to counter one of the predictions that you made earlier. I believe it was you, Matthew. I think that Daniel Hemrick is going to miss the truck playoffs. I think he could get a win, maybe during the playoffs, akin to what Lane Riggs did last season. But I think that team is just kind of rebuilding. Daniel obviously hasn't. I mean, not that it's totally different, going from Cup back to trucks, but I don't think he's going to perform as well as people think. And I think the team's going to be rebuilding. So I think he's not going to make the playoffs.
I think Hemrick had a quietly good season in Cup last year. I think he's going to actually go down there with a lot of confidence and win multiple races. I actually see him being the truck champion this year. If it isn't Corey Heim, if it is not Corey Heim.
Okay.
I mean, this is a guy that has gotten it done at Phoenix before. Let's not forget. But at the end of the day, he's a very consistent and steady driver, which is something that is very much rewarded in the truck series. And I mean, given the truck series current crop right now, you have a lot of aging veterans like Crafton who haven't won in a couple of years and haven't really been relevant either. You have a bunch of, younger drivers that aren't really as accomplished as you'd really like them to be at this point in their career. I think that he can go down there in a really strong truck and really take it to the competition. I mean, this is a guy that in a field with Tyler Reddick, Cole Custer, Christopher Bell would have won the Xfinity title in 2018 if it was a points-based title. So, I mean, this is a guy that can definitely go out there and win some races if he's given the equipment and can not go to a million overtimes. But I don't know. I wholeheartedly disagree with the Hemrick take. But just to give one last prediction for myself, I think we're going to have a big three this year in the Cup Series. Ryan Blaney, Christopher Bell, and Kyle Larson. I think that those three drivers will absolutely dominate the headlines this year. And I kind of lean more towards what Joe was saying earlier about how there's only going to be 12 or 13 winners this year, because we are kind of at a point where the newness of this platform with the next gen is kind of worn off. So I see Ryan Blaney coming off of a season where he, got 3 wins for the second year in a row. He's really starting to find his identity as a Cup Series driver. You have Christopher Bell, who left 5 or 6 wins on the table last year, especially towards the middle of the season, I think about Nashville, where he just wrecked himself in the middle of the pack. And, Kyle Larson and Cliff Daniels are Kyle Larson and Cliff Daniels, so they're going to stack up wins. They would be 3 of my 4 picks. I think the 4th one is probably going to be someone like Tyler Reddick, but I don't know just yet.
I'll say something real quick because I know Matthew's got a point, but I would not be surprised if Hemrick makes the playoffs. It just seems like the conditions are trending toward the prediction I gave.
Gotcha. And I think there's going to be one guy out there that a lot of people haven't heard of yet. He's a young 18-year-old. He turns 19 years old at the time we're recording this. Tomorrow, so Tuesday, it would be the 28th. It's this kid, number 26 for Rackley War. I think Dawson Sutton has a real chance to show people that this kid's a wheelman. Obviously, Rackley War Development, they're coming into their own. If you guys don't know, but he has a mentorship with Team Hornaday Development, Ron Hornaday Jr., one of the best truck drivers ever. He's got a new mentor with Rackley War in the late model program. You might have heard of him, number 4, number 29 in history, Kevin Harvick. So he was actually teammates with Kevin Harvick at Kern County Raceway. First time ever in California for Dawson Sutton. Goes out there and beats Kevin Harvick at his own racetrack in the same Rackley War equipment. I think this Dawson Sutton kid, being as young as he is, coming up first full-time truck season, he'll be 19 years old. He had a top 5 finish at Kansas coming in for Ty Dillon. I think Dawson Sutton can really turn some heads. I think he's one of those drivers that obviously I have some confidence in him for a lot of different reasons, but one of those reasons is I've seen this kid compete, and I think he's one of those up-and-coming drivers that you guys have to watch out for.
That's interesting. He had a great end to the truck season too. Also, I like the diecast raise. That was very classy.
Yeah,
that was pretty good.
Yeah, I was there for his truck debut at Kansas, and I believe he came away with the top 5, if I'm not mistaken. Like, he very much proved why he should be there. And I mean, Rackley Ware, they're good, but I don't know. I haven't really seen like race winning pace out of them at any point. Did they get like an alliance with any of the major teams in the series during the off season that I didn't hear about?
In terms of the late model program, bringing in Kevin Harvick, you'll see Keelan Harvick as well. A lot of young guys, Kitts Miller family, Isaac. But in terms of that, I mean, the truck team too, when you have a guy like Kevin Harvick as a part of that program, as a mentor, I mean, that's all you really got to say. You bring in a Hall of Famer, one of the best drivers of all time. So even if there isn't an alliance somewhere, to have some great mentors with that organization, I think it's one of those things. I think we just got to wait and see. And if any prediction is right, hopefully it's that one.
It's going to be super interesting to see how everything turns out. We are just about out of time. Any final last minute predictions anybody wants to give a shout out? I think we had quite a good number. So with that said, we just want to thank everyone for tuning in. A big thank you to our Patreon investors, Colin Show, Mark, Robin, David, Matthew, for investing in the Grid Network each and every month, helping us pay the bills, stay on the air, and get to the track more frequently. Of course, the next race is going to be the Cookout Clash at the Madhouse, Bowman Gray Stadium. We'll be having our pre-race covers Sunday, so be sure to tune in to the Grid Network, subscribe, hit the bell icon so you don't miss any of our programs. Big thank you to everyone tuning in. Kathy, glad you enjoyed the show.
Thanks, Bob.
Encourage everyone, and also somebody giving a shout out to Ben, the man, the myth, the legend. And of course, we'll post the links. We posted already in the chat room some of the infamous IndyCar clips from Roundtable last year. For Jonathan, Tanner, and Matthew, I'm Joe Samaniego. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.